Hi everybody, we're glad you could join us for this episode of the GovCon Video Blog. I'm Mark Amadeo of the Amadeo Law Firm, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming changes that are happening to the Women-Owned Small Business or WOSB certification requirements. A few months ago in May, the SBA issued a proposed rule that changes the certification requirements for set-aside and sole source awards under the SBA's WOSB program. These particular SBA rules have been long awaited, and they implement certain requirements on WOSB certification procedures that were imposed by the National Defense Authorization Act way back in 2015. Now, the comment period for the proposed rules expired earlier this month on July 15, 2019. So hopefully the final rule will be published in the near future. And once the final rule is published, the firm will put out more information that goes into more detail about WOSB certifications. Now, I expect that the broad outlines of the WOSB certification process are not going to change that significantly with the final rule. And there are things that contractors that want to get certified can start doing now in order to prepare for the process. So in this episode of the GovCon Video Blog, we're going to talk about three things that contractors should know about the upcoming changes to WOSB certifications. The first thing that contractors should know is that they can no longer self-certify for set-aside or sole source awards under the WOSB program. So the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2015, or NDAA 2015, imposed specific requirements on the certification process for WOSBs. In particular, NDAA 2015 said that in order for a business to be eligible for set-asides or sole source awards under the SBA's WOSB program, a business had to be certified by a federal agency, a state government, the SBA, or a national certifying entity approved by the SBA. Now, despite this clear requirement in the law, the SBA continued a practice that predated the 2015 NDAA changes, and that practice was to permit WOSB applicants that did not want to or were unable to be certified by third parties to self-certify. For contractors wishing to bid on WOSB set-aside contracts, the self-certification process typically required them to upload eligibility documents to an SBA certification website, and then it was up to contracting officers to review the documentation to determine WOSB eligibility for purposes of a procurement. Well, with the latest proposed rule changes, the SBA has made it clear that contractors will no longer be able to rely on self-certification for set-aside and sole source awards under the WOSB program. Under the proposed rule, WOSB applicants can only apply for certification with the SBA, which offers certification for free, or with an approved third-party certifier or TPC, which is permitted to charge a reasonable fee. Now, if a business is already certified as an 8A participant, or if it's certified by the VA as a service-disabled veteran-owned business, or a veteran-owned business, or if it's certified as a disadvantaged business enterprise by a state agency, then all it needs to do for certification is submit evidence to the SBA that it is women-owned. But if a contractor has relied on self-certification to bid on WOSB set-asides in the past and wants to continue to compete for those set-asides, well, now is the time to begin the process of looking at all of the information that may be required by the SBA or a TPC and begin compiling it, so that the contractor is ready to begin the process as soon as the SBA rule becomes final and effective. The second thing that contractors should know is that the SBA will make its initial determination within 90 days after receipt of a complete application package. And the operative word here is complete. The rules say point blank that the SBA will not begin the process an incomplete application. So within 15 days after receiving an application, the SBA will tell the applicant whether the application is complete and ready for evaluation. Now, the part of the proposed regulation that discusses TPCs does not specify a time frame on initial decisions by TPCs. But the proposed regulation does say that TPC's certification processes must comply with SBA-approved certification standards, so a similar decision-making timeframe likely can be expected. The third thing that contractors should know is that under the proposed rule, WOSB applicants that are declined will have an opportunity to request reconsideration. So whether it has submitted an application through the SBA or through a third-party certifier, if the application is declined, a WOSB applicant is given 30 days to submit a request for reconsideration to the SBA or TPC. And in either case, the SBA or TPC has 60 days to decide whether to deny or grant the application. Now, with regard to reconsideration by the SBA, the proposed rules say an applicant can submit any information and documentation that will overcome the reason for the initial decline, including information about changed circumstances, even if that documentation and information was available to the applicant at the time it submitted the application. So, for example, if a document that perhaps wasn't necessary but could have provided more clarity on an issue was not included in the application, it can still be submitted on reconsideration. And the preamble to the proposed regulation makes clear that the purpose of the reconsideration process is to allow applicants to quickly understand their deficiencies and come into compliance and therefore become certified as quickly as possible. In fact, the preamble says outright that during this reconsideration period, applicants can address deficiencies, including by changing bylaws, articles of incorporation, or other ownership documents in order to come into compliance with the SBA's ownership and control requirements. Now, on the TPC side of things, the regulations are less specific about what information can be submitted on reconsideration, saying only that an applicant must submit its request for redetermination within 30 days of the decline. But again, since TPCs are supposed to comply with the SBA-approved certification standards, it seems likely that any reconsideration process that varies much from the SBA's process may not be approved by the SBA in the first place. Now, we'll have to see what the final regulation looks like, but it's clear that there will be some period for applicants to make corrections in an application after an initial decline. So to sum up, the three things that contractors should know about upcoming changes to WOSB certifications are: 1. Contractors can no longer self-certify for WOSB set-asides. 2. The SBA will make its determination within 90 days of a complete application. And 3. Contractors that are declined can request reconsideration. Well, that's all for today's vlog. We hope you come back again, and thanks for joining us for this episode of the GovCon Video Blog.